So Louise asked, my study has very limited peer review literature, but has a lot of gray literature. How do I handle this? So Matthew, what can we do in situations where there isn't necessarily a ton of academic literature on the topic, but lots of industry notes, white papers? What's the strategy here?
This is a great one. I work with a lot of gray literature in my field because public education is government regulated, right? So my publications almost always have citations to gray literature, to government documents, to guidance documents, to regulation, to law. So a couple of thoughts. The first thing is I think it's always very important in our literature review that we're bifurcating between the peer review literature and the gray literature. So at some point in your review, you're going to talk about here's the peer review side of things, and then you're going to say here's the rest of it. And even within that gray literature, I might couple together the law and regulation into one section, and then I might do non-regulatory guidance in a section. Then I might do professional literature. So from like not the journals, but the magazines, right, that come with a professional field. And so we'll break those up again into individual sections. So it's very clear to the reader that you understand, less to the reader, more to the evaluator, that you understand the difference between that peer review literature and the rest of it. Gray literature, a lot of people think is just bad and that we should stay away from it. But especially if you're dealing with a state or federally regulated field or topic area, you must include that gray literature. Any publication about public education, about social work, about industry, even like if you're working in the automotive industry or the airline industry that are heavily regulated, those must include some conversation of the policy landscape. And gray literature is where you're going to find that. It is always better, in my opinion, to cite a regulation and say this regulation says X, Y, and Z than to cite a person who cited the regulation and say this author says that this regulation says, right? We want to go straight to the source. So don't get freaked out about gray literature. Just make sure that you're bifurcating it into individual sections so that the evaluators understand that you understand the difference.
I think that's so important. And this also is quite true in the sort of business studies as well. If you're doing an MBA, DBA, you're often going to be looking at industry papers. And while those are sort of halfway between an academic paper and a white paper, they are still important and beneficial. And they're going to be particularly useful in terms of collecting data on what are the current trends, the situation in progress. And so definitely don't hide away from that gray literature, but always make sure that you do have some academic backing as well. Even if it's to say, this is what is in the academic space and it is very limited, therefore there is a need for more academic research. And that's a great way to sort of pull yourself forward in terms of the coverage.